Good morning, everybody. Okay, here we go. One, two. Give me the run again. There you go. All right, this is live, so there's no editing or anything. What you hear is what you get. And this is my baby trumpet. It's actually a pocket trumpet. I used this on one prior show. This type of horn was invented in the 1800s, but I still love it, and this is one of my favorite little horns. So there's a little song for you on that. Now, just for your cultural enrichment time, that song is Yankee Doodle Dandy. And that was not written by George M. Cohan, although everybody thinks it was because he used this type of song in a lot of the musicals that he did back in the early 1900s. Now, it's called Yankee Doodle Dandy, yet it was written by a British Army physician, Dr. Richard Shuckburgh, during the French and Indian War, which took place between 1759 and 1763. And it was actually a satire of American colonists, and it made fun of them. But I guess the words were changed to what it is now because it's it's considered a very patriotic song, and it admires the American spirit. That's why it's called Yankee Doodle Dandy. So there you go. There's your culture enrichment time for today. And this is the only program on the internet or on television where you come on and you're going to listen to an interview of a rather morbid subject, and a guy comes on and plays a horn and plays some stuff that was written 50 and 100 years ago. Actually, I do it just for admiration for these guys because I think in those days you had the greatest songwriters ever. This stuff is like 100 years old. It still sounds good. We have back with us today a very special guest, one of my favorites and one of yours. I'm positive because I can tell by the compliments and by the number of views because she has an insight that is unique. So this is the one show where you're going to get the taste of years of experience within the cult, dealing with people, seeing the abuses of it from Karen de la Carriere. So I just give the name right off the bat. And let's get right into it because I'll tell you, Karen, what I'd like to start off with, if you don't mind, is back in 1993, when the cult got tax exemption, somehow that went to their heads and they became like a megalomaniac on steroids because they thought they could do no wrong and everything was hunky-dory and that was it. And we are the greatest. And let's get in with that, okay?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Hello. In 1993, the IRS granted tax exemption, which the cult of Scientology spun as we are now recognized as a religion by the government of the United States. Rubbish. The government of the United States cannot say what is and isn't a religion. It's just not. They can state what qualifies per a checklist for tax exemption.
Yeah.
But that's different than saying you are a religion.
That's a damn good point, Karen. That is a real good point.
Yeah. For example, Ron, before we get into our topic on children, the Westboro Baptist Church that do these horrific demonstrations, God hates you, you are fags, all of this, they got tax exemption. What about all these people that drank Kool-Aid in the Guianas? What is that? What was that horrific church?
Jonestown.
Jim Jones.
Jones, yeah.
They got tax exemption.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, the most bizarre Uh, uh, there are there are there's a church in West Virginia which the whole ceremony is with snakes, poisonous snakes that can, and sometimes they
Jesus Christ.
kill the handler. But the Church of Holy Snakes or whatever, they got tax exemption. So tax exemption is not the moon landing as your son David Miscavige made out to be. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is the most monumental breakthrough of all time. We landed on Mars. Rubbish.
No, you're right.
The most Church of the Holy Rollers, Church of these churches where they speak in tongues and roll their body and have like epileptic seizures, they get tax exemption.
Yeah, yeah.
So the cult of Scientology getting tax exemption, it means that you qualify on a series of checklists.
Big
Do
difference.
you have a moral code?
Yeah.
Do you have Sunday services? Do you have doctrines? Do you have a congregation? That kind of thing. So when we sort of sidetracked, but when in 1993, when the IRS finally gave tax, remember they had yanked any possibility of tax exemption earlier. When they restored tax exemption, Scientology went into a massive recruit campaign. What they wanted to do was increase the numbers. Do you know that in the 1980s, the amount of Sea Org members who signed $1 billion year contracts was 5,000?
Yes, I did know that. I heard that figure somewhere. I did know that.
And now we're in 2019, and the figure coasts around 5,000. There isn't in all those 30 years, there's no growth.
Yeah.
Because there's a never-ending line of people who want to leave.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
They want to depart. And so there's a revolving door. The average stay in that hell is about 5 years. You and I were what was wrong with us?
I know. I was a fucking idiot,
What was
man.
wrong with us?
Oh boy. And I was in.
We were like donkeys.
Listen, I was in the Sea Org longer than you. I was in for 26 and a half years. You smartened up a lot earlier.
Yeah, I was less than 20 years, but I was in that range. But I'm talking about in 5 years.
Yeah.
A recruiter actually blew the whistle and said that there's a huge percentage, as much as 75%, that leave in the first year.
Wow.
Or they can't get through. They see the brutality in the EPF, this pseudo pretended military. It's a military camp.
Yeah.
It's a boot camp of the military, and they just say, "I'm out of here,"
Yeah.
and they leave. So if you calculate all those that come and go, all right. So a lot of children. Going back to your topic, children were recruited, and because Hubbard views children as ancient spirits who've lived reincarnated billions of times and have gone right back in eternity, children are not cut any slack whatsoever.
Yeah.
None. And they're punished just as if they're adults. And they're not allowed to have a childhood because they have to be producers.
Yeah.
Working for the cause of Scientology. Now, Ron, they do things that. Do you remember a show, To Catch a Predator?
No, I don't.
Anyway, there was a show on a channel for NBC that did sting operations, and older men, 50, 60, would come to meet what they thought was an 11-year-old or 12-year-old for sex.
Wow.
And they were all stings. And as they would arrive, they would be escorted and arrested and handcuffed. And it was actually detectives that they were talking to. But the detectives would go into these chat rooms and find these predators looking for children for sex. Now, they were arrested for just for saying sexual things
Yeah.
and saying, what are you wearing? Can you take off your panties? What, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in Scientology, these 14-year-olds like Serge Delmar and a host of others, like Astrid Woodcroft that I talked about on another, they had to handle the sexuality of grown male adults. I'm telling you, there isn't a whole lot of difference between the show To Catch a Predator and what Scientology children have to go through.
Wow.
Serge had to, Serge is in the sanctity of a session. The adult who can get off on this talks explicit sex to this Scientology kid
Jesus Christ.
who's now being an auditor. So has to listen to very sexually depicted sexual episodes. But it's a session.
Oh boy.
But the child, the Scientology child, is sitting there hour after hour listening to this and more, and then having to, we call it pulling a withhold, making the person spit out their fantasies and their sexual deeds. Did they do this? Did they do that? Did they use a sexual toy? A 14, 15-year-old Scientology kid is being put through this. This is no different than what that show To Catch a Predator. People got arrested for being that explicit with children.
Oh, that's a hell of a point, Karen. That is a hell of a point.
Yeah. Do you see what Scientology gets away with?
Jesus Christ.
They get away with it.
No.
And that's why you saw on Mike Rinder's blog yesterday, every single view was that Scientology was heinous and depraved.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is what goes on behind closed doors. 14, 15-year-olds have to sit hour after hour listening to adult males get off talking sex.
Jesus Christ.
But it's under the guise of, it's a confessional. Why are 14, 15-year-olds being so indoctrinated that they're having to do this kind of session? Because I'm gonna, for those that missed it, I don't have the paper right here, but Hubbard said, children are simply spirits. So there's no, all this nonsense of cutting them slack and, none of that. None of that. This is a guy called Serge. He used to be Serge Gill. He's now Serge Delmar. I think he got rid of his parents' last name. He was a gay boy that parents threw into the Sea Organization for gay conversion therapy. In other words, they felt the cult of Scientology would ungay him, knock it out of his head, change his identity so he couldn't just be who he was. And Serge did a huge expose and has belatedly reported to Clearwater PD that he was sexually molested 6 times by various adults. And he went to a very large newspaper in the United Kingdom called The Sun. The Sun is almost as big as the Daily Mail. And Serge went on record. Now, the Sun needed to corroborate such data, and they got 5 other Scientology kids that also experienced molestation, rape, very, very, very heavy, like sitting on the lap of an adult and having their privates played with, or playing with the privates of the adult. So this is the name, Serge, Serge, Delmar, separate word Del, D-E-L, and the last word Mar, M-A-R. If you just Google Serge Delmar Sun newspaper, you will get a remarkable story of molestations, rapes, sexual stuff that has never, ever been charged. Of course, Florida just changed their law. Do you know that they had a time limit, Ron?
No.
A statute of limitations?
No, I didn't know that.
If you grew up and 10 years later you wanted to report it, you couldn't. So, statute of limitations. You can rape, but too late. Can't tell.
Wow.
They've changed that law now. And I believe they've changed it in California as well. Soon, other states. If you had child rape, you can report this. Not a time limit. You look at homicide. They treat homicide. It doesn't matter. There's no statute of limitations on homicide.
No.
Rape of children, molestation of children should be exactly like that.
Well, it is in those 2 states now. I wonder if there's any law stating otherwise in any other states, though.
Well, I'll tell you, New York, California, and Florida are sort of opinion leader states, meaning they set the tone.
Yeah.
They set the thing. And then very often smaller states that, you know, states, Wyoming and Idaho and North Dakota, South Dakota, these states that are not always in the news, they copycat word for word legislation that, for example, California absolutely leads. What California makes law, other states just bend over and copycat that law. So it can become more. Children must be protected from cults. Children are absolutely not protected once their parents are sucked into a cult. They are, first of all, they're drawn into the cult with no power of choice. They didn't want to be the cult. But you know, Ron, so many children, like your granddaughter, Jenna Miscavige, came back and did pushback. They were not going to spend the rest of their lives in Scientology. So there is a huge, what do you call it? Like a blowback.
Well, like a boomerang or a repercussive act, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm talking a lot. Can you
No.
give a little? Can you give a little blurb or paragraph of children at the in-base? They weren't allowed to be on the base, correct?
They stayed.
Give a little data on that.
Well, okay, they stayed at a place called Happy Valley, and this was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 miles away from the base, and it is the place where when I joined staff in 1985. My berthing, or where I had my bed and my belongings, was at Happy Valley, and I had to drive out there and drive back to go to work. And the road to the place was so bad that from using it, I broke one of the springs on my axles in the car. And it was a terrible road. It was like not even a road. It was something that, you know, like a thing going through the woods where you wouldn't bump into trees if you were on it. But that's where the kids were when they were in the cadet org. And that's where they lived. And as a matter of fact, that's
were the parents allowed to see them? Was their family time?
It was a joke. I mean, you're supposed to get family time in the evening, but you're not going to drive out there. When you have to be on post, and an hour later, you're going to spend a good 20, 25 minutes getting out there. You'd see them, hello, kid, and you're out of there, you know. So on the weekends, you're supposed to be able to see them. But these are rules that were made up to sound good, okay? They sound good, but they don't follow them at all. And that's where the kids had their cadet org, they had their birthing out there. Not while I was there. That came after my stay, and when we all moved to some type of birthing on the base and eventually into the birthing that was built for us. That's when they then had it as the cadet org's home, and that's where they would do their work and have their drills and everything and their punishments and no pleasures. I mean, it was just growing up on a goddamn compound. So that's about what I can tell you about.
Well,
It's
the
what?
children grew up in a sort of junior military camp.
Yeah, it's a compound.
Seahawk was a senior military camp, and the kids really, the rights and denial of kids to have any rights in Scientology is astounding. Kids have no rights.
No, and there was no joy in their lives.
Pushed around.
The only joy they had was, I don't know, maybe going to bed at night. But other than that, their whole day was planned out. They had to study. They had to do work.
And no parents. They were denied to have a family nucleus.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly
the
right.
Parents were needed for greed, corporate greed, for Scientology production. So the children were raised by a nanny. Now, let me tell you how, let me just tell you how low the Scientology view is of the caring of children. When a Scientology staff member hit the skids, they fell into disgrace. They were like, they weren't cutting it, or they screwed up, or they did something really bad.
They'd make a nanny of them.
They made a nanny. Those were sent to be nannies.
Jesus
That
Christ.
was considered the lowest of the totem pole.
Yeah.
The lowest of the low, just before the RPF, the prison mind camp, the POW, prisoner of war camp, to mind control you. Just before, one level above that was nanny.
Yeah, I know.
So dysfunctional people that could not endure Sea Org life were made nannies.
And they took it out on the kids. And they took it out on the kids, Karen.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
So the nanny was the disgraced Sea Org member because children were considered worthless. In fact, they were considered nuisance.
Yeah.
And you know, Scientology prolifically has these milk and water. Scientology stands for family. It's got some fake websites with posed family showing happy face with smiling. And let me tell you, Scientology has always been brutal on families.
Yeah.
Brutal. And has destroyed many a family.
Well, one of their stock and trades on trying to get you to obey them is they threaten you. If you leave and say anything about this, we will disconnect your family from you. And they use it as a tool. They think it's a legitimate tool. As a weapon, yeah.
It's weaponized. It's weaponized. We'll break up your family. You will never see your family again.
Yep.
I wanted to gently cover the story of Lori Hodgson. Lori was in 30 years, 40 years. She was staff and so on. And they wanted her children. Lori did a lot of pushback to fight against them taking her kids. She did a lot of pushback. I'm trying to find a picture of Lori because pictures help. And, you know, they wore her down. And then she had, here it is. Let me grab it. This is Lori, and this is Lori's two kids.
Yep.
Now, Lori went in for some kind of knee surgery. Can I just diverge a little bit to give you another feature of the cult, even though this is not exactly about children?
Go on.
Lori, Oh, I really invite you to invite Lori to your show. She's a great guest. I
Yeah.
did some videos on Lori, and we were discussing how the cult pretends that when you are in session, anything you say in session is privileged, it's secret.
That
There's
is complete and utter bullshit. That doesn't mean anything. You might as well say, woo, 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 wow, 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 wow. What the fuck does that mean? Nothing. And that's what that statement, being privileged, complete and utter lie. And
they
by the way,
use
I will have Lori
every
on in the
little
future,
tidbit
Karen.
you said, it's all recorded. You can't have a session in Scientology without a videotape recording it.
Yep.
But these are all summarized. And if you ever speak out on the church,
They'll use it.
anything you've ever said is twisted, it's embellished, it's exaggerated,
Yep.
it's altered. There may be a grain of truth in it, but it's completely, and then it's posted on the web in the hate pages.
Yep.
Lori said this on my videos. This is not, she didn't want to make this she made it completely public. She was born with a slight deformity in her foot. It was so minor that if she was at a swimming pool in flip-flops, you wouldn't even hardly notice it, but she had a big deal on it.
Yeah, I know.
And she talked about it in her sessions. Guess what? The Cult of Scientology made a hate page on her because she left Scientology and spoke out. She went to see Marty Rathburn. That was her big. And they did this huge thing about her feet and how she had this minor. They made it into internet business from the only place she'd ever discussed it was in session.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Okay.
So Lori did not want her kids in Scientology, and the recruiters just worked on them morning, noon, and night. Lori, in the middle of her surgery and her knee surgery and this and that and the other, she then sort of gave in, and they grabbed these two kids. Now, if you buck the Scientology recruiters, the reason they always have staff is they have full-time recruiters. Morning, noon, and night, their entire job is to go out and get staff.
Right.
They're huge. They're big on recruitment. They could have as many as 6 recruiters. I think the Flag Land Base has over 20 recruiters who do nothing but recruit the people that go there for services.
Yeah, and the turnover is unbelievable. They come in and they say, hey, what the hell is this? You know, I'm out of here. A lot of them do that right off the bat.
Right. So Lori's kids haven't seen her for 9 years. They've completely cut the line.
Wow.
Like she doesn't exist. And she's been heartbroken. She's been on Inside Edition. She's been on other talk shows. She's really come out and spoken. She only wants to be a mom.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even care if her kids want to do Scientology. She just wants to go back to being a mom. And of course, as I've said previously, I'll say it again. What you want, the cult makes absolutely sure you are denied.
Yeah.
That is in the culture. If you want a day off, no. If you want to be paid for the week's work, no. You're going to get $25 for your 80-hour week. Suck it.
Yeah.
You will be constantly denied what you want, but the cult will superimpose on you that which you don't want. That is the game.
That is
so
true.
That is the bottom line of how the cult of Scientology operates.
Yep. And I'll tell you, I can give you a similar thing. My grandson, David, I was at his baptism. It really isn't baptism, but it's you welcome the kid into life. And then later, as he's older, he's going to get married. and I wanted to get the time off to see him at the wedding, and I would be gone on Saturday. Basically, I would leave Friday night late, be gone Saturday, come back Sunday morning. All I would miss was what they called the cleanup. Well, we would clean up the base that day. Okay, it was beautification of the grounds. You'd cut grass, paint lines on the ground, or whatever. I could not go. They absolutely refused to let me go for that one day. I will
Yeah.
tell you something. When that happened to me, it was a big straw that broke. That was part of a lot of them, though. That wasn't
Yeah.
the only thing. But it was devastating to me that I just couldn't take
Yeah.
one fucking day to see him. And they made it known that I could not go. You know,
Yeah.
people would say, well, you're David Miscavige's father. You got special treatment. Bullshit. If
Yeah.
anything, I got worse treatment because they wanted approval. You have the name Miscavige, so you have to be better than everybody else, which means you're going to get more punishment if you fuck up. Anyway, I wanted to toss that in because that was
Yeah.
absolutely, I could not do it. I got to tell you, when the girl finally came and told me I couldn't do it, I said, this is devastating. And it was. Well, I'll tell you what, you earned your right deserve. Here I am on international viewing, and I have people on talking about how you are. So well done, Church of Scientology. You accomplished what you didn't want to do, and I say, fuck you. All right. Go on, Karen. Continue.
That's the game.
Yep.
You will be denied what you want. You will be denied what you want.
Yep.
So Laurie's son, I don't know what went on, but he had to sign a $3 million gag order that he would never tell his own mom what went on in the Sea Organ Scientology.
Wow.
As a 16-year-old, he had to sign a $3 million gag order. Lawyers have heard all this and talked about it and stuff. It's absurd to make a 16-year-old. Now, that would not hold up in a court of law. However, he believes, he believes it. It's a psychological, children will take this very seriously.
Yep.
I want to finally give you a little story on my son who died at 27 years old, Alexander Jench.
Yep.
He had a chip on his shoulder and would call himself the boy without a dad. He actually used to go around adopting various male figures in his life as it's like kind of a grandpa, sort of. He would. You could see how much he hungered just to have a father.
Wow.
Well, David Miscavige, your son made, because I've explained to you what you want to have, you cannot have.
Yeah.
So his father, who was the president of Church of Scientology International, Heber Jench, was constantly either made to do hard manual labor, like cleaning sealed buses, which he was on for weeks and weeks, just morning, noon, and night scrubbing the buses, or he was for 8 years in that absolute hell on earth called SP Hole.
Yep.
SP means suppressive person. That means that you are an evil antisocial personality.
Right.
And all the top execs of Scientology were jailed and imprisoned behind bars in this, they called it the hole, because it was like the dungeon of going into this imprisoned space.
Yep.
So for 8 years, again, Heber couldn't see Alexander because he was in SP Hole. And then I want to tell you this little anecdote. Alexander got word that Heber got permission to see him for half a day. Don't quite know how it all worked out, but Alexander got a green light from OSA, Office of Special Affairs, that he could come and see Heber. And Alexander was just on cloud nine. He had already left the Sea Org, Alexander, and was living in Dallas. So he flew out of Dallas, Fort Worth, bought himself a new suit, arrived at Office of Special Affairs on Hollywood Boulevard, 6331 Hollywood Boulevard, and was just excited beyond belief to see his dad for the first time in 13 years or 11 years, to see his father.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a kid and you don't see your dad for 13 years because he works for the Sea Organization, the military fake Navy staff that parade around like they're elite and better than you and me.
Yeah.
Alexander arrives at the Hollywood Guarantee Building and he is told that Heber is not allowed, that Heber can't make it, which all that it meant was Heber's half day with Alexander was canceled.
Yep.
No, you can't leave. You can't see your son.
That was it.
You haven't seen your son for 13 years, but you can't see him. Alexander was crushed.
I don't blame him.
Absolutely crushed.
Yeah.
He went back to LAX. He didn't even hang out in Los Angeles. You're not allowed to talk to me or see me. I was 2 miles down the road.
Yeah.
He couldn't pick up the phone. He couldn't call me because I was speaking out on the cult. He went back to Los Angeles airport called LAX, got on a plane, went back to Dallas, Fort Worth. 3 months later, he was dead.
Yeah.
He never, ever saw his father again.
Well, Church of Scientology, you accomplished.
That is the cult of Scientology.
That's the product of the church. That's one of the products of the Church of Scientology. Wow.
I hate this to come to an end with a down, but I wanted the impact to show a family story.
Yeah.
And children and how the cult destroys families.
Wow.
The good news is lawsuits are coming. Lawsuits are happening.
Yep.
Law firms are hungry for abused children in cults. I know now 3 law firms that are hungry for this kind of lawsuit and case that they will take on pro bono. And if you were mistreated in the cult or know someone, just get in touch with Ron or me. Yeah. Write to us in comments and we'll send you my email address, the world knows, is KarenDelac@gmail.com. We will get these lawsuits. We will have the cult brought down legally in courts of law.
Okay, and just to tell you, on my website, therealronmiscavige.com, there will be a point where it says contact Ron, and you can make a phone call, and if I don't answer it, you can leave a voicemail, and that will go into an email to me, and I will do the same thing. I'll help you get in touch with these law firms. And Karen, why don't you just tell them what pro bono means? You mentioned that word.
Yeah, pro bono means the law firm, if they feel your case has merit, will represent you at no cost.
And all they charge, they do charge a percentage, though.
They will take their percentage,
yeah.
But you don't have to have money
exactly
to hire the law firm. Mm-hmm.
I wanted you to mention that because that could be prohibitive to a person who doesn't have a lot of money. But so they do it, and their reward will be when they win the case for you.
Yes,
they'll take a percentage.
Then they take a big percentage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, listen, I don't want to talk anymore.
Whatever was agreed upon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to talk anymore because that point you made, I want to leave people with that. I just want to tell people, go to my website if you want to become a patron or you want to subscribe and hit the bell to make sure you get notified because you're going to get more programs like this where you're going to receive news, maybe the first time ever. Like I remember a little while back we did one where you gave some news about the Purif that was never told before. And this one about Alexandra, I didn't know that he was denied to see Heber. And because I'll tell you, that's crushing. So, it's a hell of a way to end, but it's a story that demonstrates what one of their products are. Anyway, That's it for now, Karen. Wonderful having you on, and of course, you're going to hear more about her
All
and
right.
me in the future. That's for goddamn sure. So, thanks again, Karen.
Thank you, Ron.
And
Bye-bye, everybody.
bye bye, everybody. I will see you
Bye,
on.
Sean. Bye, Ron.
Okay, I'll see you on the next episode or Life Lesson. You can check that out. But anyway, see you the next time. Bye bye.